you mentioned 1971, and there's a new album coming out soon, live at the Oval,
Yes,
from 1971, and I believe you were involved in writing the liner notes for that. Is that right?
yes, that's right. Yes, it's just been delivered, and it'll be out in August. And it's a fantastic little slice of. I mean, we have live shows from the Who in '71, but they were really powerful that night, which you'll be able to hear um, from the tapes. They had a lot of competition that night. The Faces were on before them, and the Faces were sort of like the heroes of the moment because Rod had just put out Every Picture Tells a Story and the single Maggie May, and Every Picture Tells a Story was number one that weekend, and Maggie May was about to go number one. And in fact, I think just shortly after the Oval or the following month, Rod set a chart record. He was number one on the album charts in America and Britain and the singles charts in America and Britain at the same time.
Oh
I don't
wow.
think anyone's ever beaten that record. And they were a great band live then, and they were the only act that day to come on for an encore. So the Who had to really sort of a bit like if Hendrix had gone on before them at Monterey rather than the other way around, they really had to pull out the stop. But the thing that really put them above, I think, was their new PA system. They had a fantastic Sun PA system that they brought from a company called Hale Sounds in America. And the guys from Hale Sounds had come over from America to actually set up the PA because they brought it back in the Oval was the first show that they used it. And it's like something like 7 tons of equipment that all the other acts were using a WEM, Charlie Watkins WEM system, with a little bit of the Who's foldbacks, and then all of that had to be broken down for these big speakers and John's bass gear and everything to be brought on stage. And lots of people say, as soon as the Who started playing, it was almost like the difference between day and night. It was loud, but it was clear. It was really well mixed, and it was a good show.
Is that something that's been sat in the can for a while and it is now just seeing the light of day, or has it been recently discovered, or?
Well, it turned up back in about the late '80s. I think the vendor who had the tapes offered them to the Who, but you got to remember that in those days, a lot of things that were what you would call problematic on a tape. And in those days, of course, we don't have the technology that we have now. So it was felt that the standard, not the standard of the performance, but the standard, the quality of the recording wasn't as good as some of the other tapes they had. And so through one thing or another, the tapes they didn't get released at the time. Anyway, cut a long story sideways, the tapes changed hands, and the person that ended up with them, when we were putting together the Who's Next box, we discovered where they were and who now owned them. And it was a process, a long and involved process involved to get them, number one, to agree a deal to get them to be released. And then, of course, to make them presentable for today's sort of like, with all the Atmos and everything like that. So it took a long time, and many people presume they were lost. They were never lost. They were just in private hands. And it just had to be a deal, just had to be worked out. And eventually the deal got worked out. And here we are now in 2025. They're coming out.
Yeah, it's going to be great when that's out, and I'm personally really looking forward to hearing it. I'm guessing Pete and Roger would have listened to it to give it the okay. Do you know
Yeah,
what they think of it?
yeah,
Have they told you?
well, they haven't told me, but I've heard that they've signed off on it. And yeah, it's there's nothing to be embarrassed about. In fact, it's a warts and all performance. There's a few out of tune guitars and things like that, but it doesn't matter at all. Nothing's been done to fix anything that it is warts and all. But the Who's warts are impressive warts, shall we say, for want of a turn of phrase. So it sounds very good.
Oh, that's great. And yeah, you're absolutely right about the warts and all thing. I spoke to Jodie Linscott recently, and I said to her, "Who fans love the mistakes?
Yeah,
We're all in for the mistakes."
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I guess if you're not in their skin, but if you're an artist, I mean, part of you thinks that, like, well, if you gave a show in front of an audience and it was a prestigious show as this was, and you want to, like, you don't want it to be faultless, but you want to be, fairly, competent or professional. But it doesn't matter, that was the thing, and that was the thing about all those shows in those days. The Oval was sort of like the end of all those shows, because the as I say in the notes, the outdoor rock festival, the 1 day festival or the 3 day festival, had only really started in Britain in the about 68, 69, with the Isle of Wight festivals and the Hyde Park free shows, your free concerts in the park. So it was still a new phenomenon, and people were still learning on the fly how these things work. So as we know, things would go wrong. There'd be innumerable delays between acts, and things would break down. But at least we've got a record of these shows. And who cares if there's a bum note or something goes wrong? There's humming PAs, feedbacking feedback from whatever. It's just it's all an ingredient of that show, I think.
Are you involved in anything else Who related coming up soon that you can maybe tell us about?
Not at the moment, no. That Matt, I'm sure, has talked to you about the Who Are You special deluxe edition that's coming out in September, I believe. So
Oh,
you're going to
brilliant.
have two bits of new Who product coming out within weeks of each other. Be interesting. But nothing at the moment. I'm hoping for some news on something soon, which I've put forward, but it just has to go through the correct channels, as they say. But fingers crossed it'll come off. So yeah.
Oh, that sounds great. And yeah, hopefully that'll come to fruition. Um, yeah, the Who Are You box set. Matt did talk to me about that, and we were talking about the fact that I know you said when you were writing anyway, anyhow, anywhere, and you kind of realised that there wasn't maybe so much going on with the Who story at that point. But I think it is a part of their history that does kind of get overlooked a little bit, and maybe glossed over. So it's going to be really interesting to read Matt's essays and
Mm.
Matt's liner notes on that, and maybe learn a bit more about that period in their career.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was an interesting time because all that punk and new wave thing that was happening at the time, um, it was, a lot of it was um, directly attributable to the early Who, and they were one of the few of the old guard that weren't being dismissed as, like Led Zeppelin and Queen and Electric Light Orchestra, all these big bands who were doing shows at Earl's Court and all that. And the Who were doing big shows. They played Charlton the year before, and but Pete was still very much, you know, he was very much a champion of that. That he would go and see punk gigs, and he realized where they were coming from. So it was a funny time for him because he was writing music that I may get into trouble for saying this, but it was almost prematurely middle aged, and yet all these young bands were inspired by the Who, all these 19, 20-year-old kids. And so it was a sort of weird dichotomy between the music he was writing and what was happening in England at the time. Yeah.
I think again that's classic Who. You got two opposing things colliding together, and something great
Mm.
comes out of it.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's from all accounts there'll be some interesting stuff on it. So yeah, I'll be interested to hear it when once it's out there.